Hello folks, it's Mr. Neil here. This video is going to be a very quick overview of the environmental impact and security precautions parts of the computer systems unit within National 5 Computing Science. Within environmental impact, you need to be able to describe the energy use of computer systems, the implications on the environment, and how these could be reduced. Within security precautions, you need to be able to describe the role of firewalls and describe the use made of encryption and electronic communication. So let's start by looking at environmental impact. You should be able to describe the energy use of a computer and other digital devices, and you should be able to describe how to reduce the energy use using a variety of different methods. So all computers and digital devices rely on electricity to work, whether this comes straight from the mains or whether we use a battery to charge it. When a device is drawing power, the amount of energy used is measured in watt hours. So for example, here's a picture from the back of a laptop where it is using 200 watts per hour. So if I'm using this laptop for 3 hours a day, I would be using 600 watt hours of electricity. If I'm using this laptop for 3 hours a day, every day of the year, so that's 1,095 hours, that equates to 93,075 watt hours, or 93.075 kilowatt hours. The problem with consuming energy when we're using our computers is that across the globe, the majority of our electricity comes from fossil fuels, so coal, oil and gas. However, in Scotland, we're making big inroads to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. By burning fossil fuels, we produce carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. The Scottish Government research in 2015 showed that 151 grams of CO2 was produced per kilowatt hour. So that means if my laptop is utilising 93 kilowatts of electricity per year, it is producing 14 kilograms of CO2. However, there are some hidden emissions when we're using our computers. For example, all my files and all my resources are stored within my Glow OneDrive, which is cloud storage, but somewhere in the world that is powered servers, and they might not be within the UK or Scotland, so not within the Scottish Government figures. There are several different ways we can reduce the energy consumption of our computers. We can modify the monitor settings, modify the power down settings of our computer, and the standby settings of our computer. So most modern monitors should automatically support low power mode. This means if the monitor doesn't detect an input signal, it will automatically go into standby mode. With most modern monitors, we can also reduce the brightness of the screen, and this is something you may have done on your smartphone or tablet if you wanted to extend the battery life. It is also important that we don't use screensavers, because this not only takes up processing power from the computer, but it stops the monitor from using its own low power or standby mode settings. There may also be some few options built into your computer system that can reduce your power consumption. This could be by powering down certain devices or even the whole computer. So for example, on a Mac, we can power down the hard drive so it doesn't use any electricity. Within large businesses, there might be network software that powers down all computers connected to the network. For example, at my school, there's an application called Night Watchman, which means at the end of the day, if our computers are not being used, they're automatically turned off. As an individual, the settings that we are most likely to use on our computers are sleep and hibernate. Sleep can be activated after a period of inactivity, or we can press a button on the device, and that means the screen will be put into standby mode or turned off. The hard disk and other back and storage devices are powered down, but RAM continues to be powered, and that's down to the fact that the information is only stored in RAM when it is powered. Hibernation is almost the same as sleep. However, all of the contents of our RAM have to be copied onto back and storage, and then RAM is also powered down. When you boot up a computer from sleep mode, it should boot up fairly quickly. Booting up from hibernation will take a little bit longer as the contents of RAM have to be repopulated. Sleep and hibernation are really good if you're going to be away from your computer for a short period of time. However, if you're going to be away from your computer from an extended period, it's a good idea to do a complete shutdown. The devices that I use are an iMac and a Dell laptop running Windows 10. So let's have a look at some of the features that I can control on that to reduce the environmental impact. Here I am within the energy saver settings within my Mac. And you can see the different settings I have. I have the ability to control when the display goes into sleep. I can set the hard drive to go into sleep when possible as well. By using keyboard shortcuts, I can also reduce the brightness of the display and increase the brightness of the display. Now let's have a look at the energy saving settings on a Windows laptop. The first energy saving features I have on my Windows laptop are the display brightness. I can turn down the brightness of the display. Also built into Windows 10 is a battery saver mode which will use less battery. Now here in the power and sleep settings, I can state when I want the screen to go into sleep mode and when I want the actual computer to go into sleep. And I can dictate different times depending on I'm running on battery power or if I am plugged in. Moving now on to security precautions. By the end of this wee section, you should be able to describe the role of firewalls in protecting computers. You should be able to explain what is meant by encryption, and you should be able to describe how encryption can be used to keep files safe and how it is used in electronic communication. So firewalls is often software running on a computer, but it can also be a dedicated piece of hardware. A firewall works by examining data that's sent in and received by your device. So you can see the example here, the information that's coming from port 80 from the internet is allowed to go through the firewall and access our computer. However, the information coming through port 23 is blocked by the firewall. This might be a malicious attack and is not allowed into our computer. In businesses, a firewall can work in the other direction, and we see this in school, where the firewall prevents users from accessing websites that are deemed inappropriate. As an individual, you're likely to have a personal firewall on the devices that you use and on your router. So let's have a look at the firewall options available on my Dell laptop and my TalkTalk router. The default firewall for Windows 10 is the Windows Defender firewall. And you can see here we have got inbound rules and we have got outbound rules. So I can control which apps and applications are allowed to send data out to the internet and receive data from the internet. Here I am within the firewall settings of my TalkTalk router. And you can see I've got limited control over what I can do with my firewall. At the moment it is on medium, so it's allowing and not allowing certain types of traffic, but I can increase that to high should I wish. And again, it changes what is allowed and not allowed, or I can change it to custom where I've got more control over what I will allow into my network and what I won't allow into my network. Encryption is a technique that is used to scramble computer data into an unreadable form. And without knowing the settings or the key that was used to scramble the data, it is almost impossible to reverse the process. Encryption has been around for years. One of the earliest forms of encryption allegedly was the Caesar cipher, and it's reported that it was used by the Roman Emperor Julius Caesar to scramble military plans before dispatching them by messenger to his generals. And it works by shifting the alphabet by an agreed number so that the enemy are unable to decipher your message. Nowadays, modern computers use complex mathematics based on prime numbers to create a very complex key with so many possibilities that even a supercomputer would take billions of years to try every possibility. Built into Windows 10 is a feature called BitLocker, and this can be used to encrypt all of the information stored on the hard drive of that computer. As a smartphone user, you also have encryption built into your Apple iPhone on your Android device, as by default, if you have a PIN or Face ID or similar, the information is encrypted until you enter in your PIN or your Face ID. Encryption is also present in digital communication. In 2020, Zoom became extremely popular. However, in the early days, they didn't provide encryption, but they have now provided end-to-end encryption. And that means that unless you have the key, you're unable to access or see the contents of the meeting. The same applies for apps like WhatsApp. So in this video, we've gone through the environmental impact and looking at how we reduce our environmental impact, and then looking at a couple of security precautions focusing in on firewalls and encryption.